Elementary school students today aren't going to know a world where AI didn't exist. So what does it mean to get them ready for this world and provide them with access to opportunity? The new digital divide would not be between students who have access to AI and those who don't. The divide will be in how students experience AI. Some will be passive recipients of chatbot learning programs largely limited to the classroom, while others will use AI to create, to build, to solve problems, and think critically.
Next up is a speaker and a session that we should have actually had many of, which is the role of technology in education and children's minds. We have a fantastic speaker. She's Orly Friedman. She's worked with this Salman Khan lab. She's the founder of Redbridge School. She's, she happens to be Tom Friedman's daughter. And when Tom introduced me to her, he said, she's the better Friedman. She's going to win the entire conference, hands down. So with that as context, I'd love to invite on stage Orly Friedman to tell us about how technology in education can be deployed in a constructive way for children. She speaks about the idea of agency, even from children at a really young age. And so to open up this whole new sort of dimension of technology, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Orly Friedman.
So we've spent the last 2 days talking about AI and how it's going to change the way we work, the way we live, the way we play, the way we stay healthy. But what we haven't talked about yet is how we prepare kids for this world while we're still preparing ourselves for it. Elementary school students today aren't going to know a world where AI didn't exist. So what does it mean to get them ready for this world and provide them with access to opportunity? That's what I'm going to explore with you today over the next 20 minutes or so, taking you on my own journey through education as an educator who has witnessed and been part of the rise of education technology. I was spoiled by my first teaching job, not because I was paid well. I wasn't paid anything. I was a volunteer during college. Meals and lodging were included. It was a boarding school. But meals were mostly chapatis or rice, which may give you a hint that this was not a New England boarding school. This was a school not for the global elite, but for the poorest of the poor in rural Tamil Nadu, India. The school is called Shanti Bhavan, and it takes 12 girls and 12 boys starting in preschool and educates them through high school. Now that the school's been around for over 20 years, they've had a number of graduates, and the result of this school is that students have gone on to the most prestigious universities around the globe and gotten jobs at Goldman Sachs, Mahindra & Mahindra, Google, Infosys, and they support their families in ways that were previously unimaginable. I say I was spoiled by this job because Shanti Bhavan was truly changing students' lives. And as a 20-year-old college student, I didn't know how rare it was for a school to actually transform life trajectories. And that's why I became an educator, because of a belief in equality of opportunity through education, and Shanti Bhavan was my proof point. Equality of opportunity remains my North Star, but since that experience in 2005, my idea of what equality of opportunity means has gone through multiple evolutions, mirroring evolutions in technology and society. I started my first full-time classroom job in 2007 in Washington, D.C. public schools, just after the release of the first iPhone. I was part of an organization called Teach for America, and the premise of this organization was that recent college graduates could improve life outcomes for low-income students by providing high-quality instruction. If we could just get kids to learn more stuff, they could get into college and from there improve their lives. The key to opportunity at this moment, we thought, was content knowledge. But was it? Wasn't that what Google did? And now that everyone had Google in their pocket, how useful for life outcomes is memorizing a lot of content? Having a baseline ability in reading, writing, and math is essential no matter what technology can do. But beyond that, what content will serve students for the long term? What we saw play out across the no excuses school movement in the US was that yes, effective teachers could get students to learn enough stuff to get into college, which was a huge milestone for many students and families. But once they got to college, many first-generation students struggled to graduate. It wasn't because they didn't know enough information. It was because their highly paternalistic, compliance-based educations hadn't set them up for success in the real world. At this point, content knowledge alone was not going to be the key to equal opportunity. As a teacher, every year I would have a couple of students in my class who were particularly challenging. I'd work hard to figure out how to connect with them, try to understand what it would take to keep them engaged and motivated. Sometimes it would take months to earn a student's trust or understand their particular needs, and then it would be June, and I would hand the child off to their next teacher and cross my fingers that their new teacher would do the same thing, take the time to get to know them and appreciate the quirks of each child. What I realized was that so much of student success was bound up in who their teacher was, and not nearly enough of a child's fate in school was in their own hands. Around this time, in 2008, I heard Sal Khan, the founder of Khan Academy, an online learning platform, speak about how students could use technology to learn at their own pace. I was intrigued. Maybe access to personalized learning tools was the key to equal opportunity, especially if we can't count on a high-quality teacher in every classroom. With this question in mind, I moved to California, to the Bay Area, to spend time in schools and classrooms, using technology in new ways. As luck would have it, Sal Khan had a 5-year-old son himself and wanted to start a brick-and-mortar school to put his theories into action. He invited me to join him as part of the founding team of the Khan Lab School, and there I had the opportunity to design a school from scratch. The only requirement was that students have uninterrupted time on Khan Academy to advance their own learning. Adults sat back while students used technology to learn at their own pace. After some weeks of watching this play out, we saw that some students really zoomed ahead in their learning, considerably outpacing grade-level norms. Other students plodded along on a predictable trajectory, and some students never really took to that way of learning. Their success with the tool didn't have to do with their academic ability or their intellectual capacity. Their success had to do with their work habits. For example, did they have a goal for what they wanted to accomplish with the tool? Could they make a plan for what they wanted to spend time on and follow through with it? Could they stay focused on learning in a room full of their peers and access to the internet? You may be thinking, hey, these are the same questions I have about my colleagues. Well, it's no coincidence that the work habits students need to succeed in the modern classroom would look similar to the work habits adults need to succeed in the modern workplace. Maybe work habits were the key to equality of opportunity. I wanted to investigate this further. So at Khan Lab School, we started grouping students by their proficiency in work habits like time management, goal setting, initiative, and organization. And we developed a curriculum to teach these skills explicitly. After 4 years of teaching work habits at Khan Lab School, what we saw was students who knew themselves deeply as learners. They knew how to set a goal for their learning, to evaluate when they needed help. They knew how to ask for help from adults and peers. They could figure out what was going to distract them and what would motivate them to keep going. I didn't have to worry about who these students' teachers would be in the future because they knew themselves as learners so well. which isn't to say that teachers don't matter, but at the end of the day, the person who has to care the most about a child's education is themselves. Okay, you might be saying, that's nice for this private school in Silicon Valley, but what about the rest of the world? Well, these days, no matter who you are and where you live, it's becoming increasingly hard to predict the future. The world is moving fast, and if you didn't think that before this weekend, now you certainly must. And we don't know what the future looks like, so the best thing we can do to prepare students is either get out the tarot cards or make them really good at the act of learning. What does it mean to be good at learning? It means being able to set a learning goal for yourself, understand when something is a just right challenge, know what will distract you or throw you off your path and plan ahead for that, recognize when you need help and feel confident asking for it. These are all skills we can teach, we can practice, and get better at. A quote often attributed to Stephen Hawking is, "Intelligence is the ability to adapt to change." This is what work habits allow. They allow students to direct their learning regardless of whether they're sitting in a classroom, their closet, a laboratory, or a Starbucks. And the pandemic showed us just how invaluable these traits are. In 2020, when COVID set in, students around the globe were forced to learn from home for the first time without a teacher standing over them, reminding them what to do and ensuring it got done. The result was significant learning loss and a level of disengagement that schools are still working to recover from. Throughout this disruptive experience, student success was highly dependent on schools' and teachers' ability to connect, both emotionally and technologically. Given trends in climate and political extremism, it's not hard to imagine that these sorts of disruptive events will happen more and more. Hopefully, we can take the lessons of the pandemic and the realization that students need a whole lot more practice taking ownership of their learning to be prepared for next time. In 2020, I launched a school to put work habits front and center, to give students agency over their learning so that no matter what the world looks like, they have the capacity to adapt and flourish. The school is called Red Bridge, named for the iconic red Golden Gate Bridge. We do things a bit differently at Red Bridge. We've taken the systems of school that traditionally reward compliance and redesigned them to reward student agency instead. We don't group students by grade level. We group them by autonomy level, based on those work habits I mentioned. Students don't passively move to the next grade in June just because they've sat in a seat for 180 days. Instead, they advocate for their own promotion. Students don't receive letter grades. Instead, students sign up to earn credits or badges when they feel they've mastered a skill or concept. The role of the teacher also looks different. We've specialized the role into the jobs of learning guides, who focus on work habit and character habit instruction, and content specialists, who focus on content instruction. While we didn't have to operate remotely during the pandemic, we did have to close for one day unexpectedly. We decided to give students the day off. We told them, treat it like a snow day. Enjoy yourself. There's nothing to do. We'll see you on Monday. But what happened next was remarkable. I received emails from 2 parents, unbeknownst to one another, sharing the schedules their children had made for this day off, marking off what they were able to get done. This was the result of students who are asked to start each day by making a plan for how they'll spend their time. Students are used to having independent work time, and students who are taught and reflect on work habits daily. Just when it seemed like we'd unlocked a key lever toward equality of opportunity, a new technology came along, ChatGPT. Perhaps highly personalized chatbot tutors will be the great equalizer. Perhaps, or maybe an entirely new set of skills are now needed to set students up to succeed in a world with these bots. We have better learning tools today than we've ever had, but around the globe, student learning outcomes have only declined over the last 15 years. This is a graph of PISA test scores, and the PISA test is given to high school students all around the globe. These are scores from 2003 to 2022. And yes, they did take a deep dive around the time of the pandemic, but already scores were trending downwards. And it's not because of a lack of access to technology. Here's another graph from the OECD that shows that access to technology and an internet-connected device has only increased across the same countries over a similar time span. Success isn't just about new learning tools. In some cases, it's actually in spite of them. But rather than being worried about the effects of ChatGPT at Redbridge, we decided we would give this new tool a whirl. So last spring, a writing teacher and I decided to put ChatGPT to use in a poetry unit with 8, 9, and 10-year-old students. We began by sharing a brief history of AI, and then got into ChatGPT and how large language models work. When we first mentioned ChatGPT, a few students eagerly shared how they'd been playing around with the tool at home with their families. One student used it to make a birthday card for her mom. Another student used it to look up new dad jokes. Other students stared back at us like we were speaking a foreign language. AI, GPT, these strange strings of letters held no meaning for them. It became obvious at that moment that the new digital divide would not be between students who have access to AI and those who don't. The divide will be in how students experience AI. Some will be passive recipients of chatbot learning programs largely limited to the classroom, while others will use AI to create, to build, to solve problems, and think critically. Once again, the divide is between active and passive use, agency and compliance. The OECD made student agency its primary focus in its goals for education in 2030. One of the studies they cite has different phases of agency. The first phase being individual, where people are working towards their own goal. The second phase being collaborative, where people are working toward a joint goal. And the highest phase is collective agency, when you're working alongside others towards something larger than yourself. We need to teach work habits to support opportunities for individuals, but we need to teach character habits or social-emotional skills to support opportunity for the collective good. The better technology gets, the more isolated we become as humans. So while you saw the graph that showed that learning outcomes have declined over the last 2 decades, one thing that's been increasing with high school students over the same time period is levels of anxiety and depression. These conditions come from feeling disconnected and disempowered. The pitfall of education technology, whether it's a personalized learning tool or a chatbot tutor, is overemphasizing the individual and undervaluing community. Imagining the role AI could play in society can be a scary exercise. Deep fakes, weaponization, bias, misinformation, which is why, for the sake not just of individuals, but of humanity, character habits have to be part of the curriculum today. As technology gets better and better, we rely on it for more in our daily lives. The role of school as a place to teach socialization, communication, interpersonal dynamics, and ethics becomes essential. I work with elementary age students, so I'm biased towards school being a place we learn to socialize. But even in business school, the most important lessons I learned were about how to successfully interact with others. What a teacher does that AI does not do is create communal experiences. Teachers teach a whole class. They think about what students need individually, but within the context of what the group needs. They monitor students' ability to communicate and collaborate with one another and support these skills. Teachers know which students to call on so the rest of the class can hear their thinking. They know who to assign a classroom helper job to in order to boost morale. Teachers know which kids to pair up on a group assignment so that the outcome is better for everyone. There's a teacher shortage of tens of millions across the globe, and it's tempting to think that AI robot teachers could solve this problem. But education is ultimately teaching kids how to be human beings in the world, and only other human beings can do that. It's not about replacing teachers with technology, it's about rethinking the role of teachers in an era when this technology exists. To go along with work habits, we also need character habits, and we need people for that. Ideally, deeply inspiring people who are role models as well as instructors, but I realize that's a tall ask. A McKinsey study in 2020 found that in many cases, the more technology students use, the worse their outcomes. But the more technologies their teachers used, the better the student outcomes. So perhaps the best way forward we can hope for is that AI frees up teacher capacity to do more of what people are uniquely good at. AI is unlikely to fix the teacher shortage, but AI may and already is replacing tutors. While teachers teach classes of students, and that's an irreplaceable experience, tutors teach individuals. We know that students can benefit immensely from tutoring to reinforce content. In the age of AI, my hope for equality of opportunity is that teachers can become super empowered, that the technology allows teachers to increase their own agency so that they can spend time on the things that matter, coaching students in lifelong learning skills and ensuring that students graduate with a moral compass to go along with their superpowers.